Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are immersing ourselves in a really chilling piece of modern folklore. It's a full story, a detailed narrative about a descent from, well, youthful pranks into just pure, unimaginable horror. It's all centered around a failed ritual.
And for you, the learner, our goal here isn't just to, retell this terrifying story.
Yeah.
We want to act as almost like narrative engineers.
Yeah.
We're going to dissect the structural blueprints of fear. We want to understand exactly how the author managed the tension, how they systematically escalated the stakes, and how they pulled off that transition from a comfortable baseline of childhood mischief to the total collapse of reality. And there's really an analysis of the architecture of dread.
Okay, let's unpack that setup, because the absolute foundation of this horror is the relationship between the narrator and Cody. Cody is the catalyst for everything, right? He's defined by these wonderfully weird, just foundational details. I mean, we're talking about a kid who claimed he had wizard blood, wore a cape for weeks, and was just obsessed with monsters and spells.
He is the magnet for the strange. And the narrator, this is really important, is not an equal participant. They're the loyal, almost reluctant follower.
Right.
They just go along because of the sheer force of Cody's personality. If the narrator were, just as enthusiastic, the story would lose its grounding.
And what establishes that grounding so well is the history of all the fake rituals.
Yes.
We see them try these absurd, low-stakes bits of magic over and over. They're eating a crayon to predict the future, trying to summon ghosts with a spoon, or, my favorite, fighting those ghosts with plastic baseball bats.
That crayon detail is just vital. It tells you, the audience, immediately that Cody values showmanship way more than results.
Totally.
These little rituals, they establish a kind of cognitive contract with the reader. We're conditioned to believe that even when Cody tries, he's going to fail and fail harmlessly. That low-stakes baseline makes the eventual shift to genuine, lethal horror just so much more impactful. The writer is exploiting that expectation you've learned.
It also gives the narrator so many reasons to doubt what's happening later on. He's been tricked or let down so many times before.
Exactly. But then the shift in commitment happens, and it is absolute. We move from, performance art to a sacred oath. The narrator recalls the exact moment they knew Cody was serious. It was the swearing on the Pokemon cards.
Okay, wait, I want to pause on that for a second. Swearing on Pokemon cards. I mean, isn't that still inherently childish? Does that really signal an irreversible shift, or is it just high-stakes kid drama?
That's a brilliant question because, in isolation, it is still childish. But in the context of their world, the Pokemon cards represent the highest possible stake.
It's their treasure.
It's the most valuable treasure they share. It's a sacred bond within their specific young ecosystem. So the oath forces you to acknowledge the intensity of that bond, which just makes the impending violence, the severing of that bond, so much more painful.
That makes sense. It's basically their version of a blood pact.
It is.
And once that oath is made, the source material for the ritual itself just changes everything. Cody didn't find this on a quick Google search. He explicitly said he had to go through a whole creepy website using a hidden browser.
And this is just a masterpiece of narrative escalation.
Yeah.
I mean, if the ritual came from a simple Reddit thread or some common forum, we might think, oh, well, it's just role play.
Sure.
But by framing the source as hidden, as forbidden, accessible only through these dark corners of the internet, the writer immediately elevates the danger level. It stops being common lore and becomes something truly occult, something untouchable. And that justifies the terrifying consequences that follow.
It shifts from the fictional world of Cody's imagination to the terrifying world of secret knowledge.
Exactly.
It moves the story beyond just a prank and into the realm of the genuinely cursed.
So with the stakes finalized, the narrative has to stage the environment. And we get this high-speed journey to Cody's house, the sprint on bikes, the manic energy. It all reflects this rush toward inevitable disaster.
And that speed is such a sharp contrast with the setting itself. Cody's house is described as squat and square, but the critical detail is the neglect. The lights are always off because his mom works nights and weekends and his dad is just gone.
This paints such a crucial picture of neglected domesticity. A house is supposed to be your ultimate shield against outside influence.
Ultimate safe space.
But here the shield is weak, it's unguarded, it's a little bit wild. The structural failure in the home makes the breach of horror feel, well, it feels inevitable, not random. It's a house that already has a narrative void waiting to be filled.
And that void leads us straight to the basement door reveal. For you, the listener, this is the first huge visual confirmation that the stakes are real. The familiar junk space of a kid's imagination is just completely transformed into a ritualistic staging ground.
The impact has to be overwhelming. The narrator steps down and describes this immediate freeze frame, this massive hand-drawn jog pentagram on the concrete floor.
Yeah.
And we get all the careful details of the setup, neat circles of candles, bowls of salt, these terrifying props like broken mirrors, little bones, stacks of torn book pages.
The atmosphere sells it too.
Yeah.
The air felt heavy, almost sticky, and the smell was complex, burnt matches mixed with something else. What's the function of that sensory overload?
It grounds the unreality of the situation. The smell suggests, chemical reactions and history. This wasn't a 5-minute setup. This was hours of meticulous, serious preparation. It justifies Cody's commitment and forces the narrator and you to realize this is an act of genuine belief in potential power. It's the visual argument that the source material might just be legitimate.
And yet, despite the horror all around them, the narrator still tries to cling to these last threads of normalcy. We get that great detail of Cody throwing him the crumpled bag of chips, "Homer up, soldier."
Right.
And the narrator's just worrying about dropping crumbs, trying to ignore this intense, terrifying setup.
That nervous tension masked by humor is the protagonist's final psychological defense. It's an attempt to minimize the horror through the mundane. But that control is immediately stripped away when the ritual actually begins.
And the chant itself, it provides another layer of contrast, underscoring the asymmetrical responsibility for what's about to happen.
Absolutely. Cody, with his sweaty, focused face, is completely absorbed, mumbling this fake Latin about opening doors and trading names. He is giving everything.
All in.
The narrator, by contrast, is half-hearted, still focusing on crumbs in his lap. This difference means when the disaster strikes, the narrator is a true victim, not a willing accomplice.
Which brings us to it. The pulse and the brutal climax. There is zero delay between that fake Latin and the confirmation that the ritual worked.
The confirmation is immediate, but it's also so specific and visceral. The pentagram doesn't just light up. It pulses with a faint red glow that literally crawls along the chalk lines. But the detail that confirms the breakdown of reality, it's the candles.
Oh, the candles. They don't just flicker. They tilt inward, bending toward the center of the pentagram like they're being pulled by invisible strings.
Yes.
The air gets thicker, it's buzzing, and the smell turns sharp and metallic underneath all that burnt wax.
That sensory confirmation is brilliant because it confirms physics has been violated. It's not an optical illusion. But this moment of successful magic is immediately followed by Cody's fatal flaw, his overconfidence.
Right.
He starts talking about the rules and the reward, and then fatally, he reveals there's a secret failsafe he can activate at any time.
Why do you call that a fatal flaw, even before the monster appears?
Because it is the quintessential horror trope. The expert who believes they have mastered the unmasterable, he won't tell the narrator what the failsafe is because he thinks his friend will panic and chicken out.
He's keeping it to himself.
This secret knowledge, kept purely for ego, is the ultimate engine of terror. It ensures that when the consequences arrive, they are immediate, overwhelming, and impossible to reverse.
And they arrive instantly. The creature's entrance is magnificent in its simplicity and horror. A huge, awful silhouette, black, rising slow out of the center, its arms unfurling like smoke but heavier.
It's the silent speed that maximizes the shock value. There is no monster roar, no warning, just sudden, devastating velocity. The attack is summarized by a sound described as just sharp and wet.
And the visual Cody's head snapping sideways and just tumbling off his shoulders before his body even collapses.
The writer eliminates any chance for slow dread or denial in that moment. You have the immediate visceral gore, blood spraying across the concrete, across the chalk, and the most personal detail across the narrator's shoes. It's instant, irreversible finality. The fact that the creature is silent through this entire bloody event only amplifies the horror. It's not performing, it's just acting.
But immediately after that violence, denial becomes the narrator's core coping mechanism.
Yeah.
We track the frantic escape, hitting the stairs, tearing through the living room, snapping his bike kickstand. The internal monologue is just screaming, "It's fake, he's pranking me."
That psychological denial is such a brilliant structural anchor. It keeps the protagonist, and by extension, you, the listener, grounded even as the events become utterly impossible. The narrator needs to believe Cody hired his older brother for a sick joke, that the blood was just ketchup.
Yeah.
It allows us to process the impossible through this really relatable lens of self-deception.
And the denial run takes him home, which structurally is the narrative setting up the next major shock. He stumbles inside, And the sound of his parents arguing, the same old fight about money and schedules and water bills, it provides this temporary, recognizable normalcy. The shield of home is back in place, just for a moment.
And that familiarity is deployed specifically to maximize the shock that follows. It lulls the narrator into a false sense of safety. The threat wasn't contained in the basement.
No.
It has followed him home, and the house, which should be the final sanctuary, is about to be breached.
The shift in the argument is subtle but devastating. The father's voice cracks, then a hard slam, the thick shattering of glass, and then just absolute silence. A silence described as being louder and thicker than any scream could have been.
That moment of creeping dread while he's hidden under the blanket is essential for the pacing. He waits for a sign of normal life to resume, his mother yelling, his father cursing, but nothing comes.
Nothing.
And this forced waiting compels him to investigate, to leave the very last place he felt safe.
The living room reveal is a direct, horrifying parallel to the basement scene. It's violent, familiar objects are destroyed, the overturned couch, the shattered coffee table, and his parents' twisted, broken faces staring up with these wide, glassy eyes, their mouths frozen mid-scream.
And crucially, the blood soaking the carpet is a mirror image of the blood soaking the concrete in the basement. The ritual's consequence has replicated itself in his home. It confirms the complete loss of sanctuary.
Yeah.
The horror is no longer isolated to the place of the ritual. It has personalized the attack and proven that all barriers are gone.
And the final, crushing confirmation is when he spots the creature. It is hunched low near the fireplace, its head cocked at an angle, and its eyes lock right onto the narrator's.
The terrible realization just lands. It followed him home. The monster is not bound by space or location. It is bound to the narrator. The pursuit is now personal, and the threat is omnipresent.
This leads us to the story's final, devastating structure, the sprint to the last possible refuge. He heads to this old, moldy shack in the woods, a secret fort from their past, a relic of their childhood security.
He dives inside among the rotten beams and torn-up insulation, but the narrative offers no comfort here. Instead, it focuses on the crushing structural realization. Cody is dead, the fail-safe he kept secret is gone, and the narrator is entirely alone and ignorant.
The story ends not on a resolution or even a chase, but on overwhelming, amplified terror. Because the protagonist has lost all knowledge, all allies, and all sanctuary.
The final sequence of the narrator's thoughts is the ultimate triple threat that makes this story stick with you. It strips away all possible paths to safety. I don't know what it is, I don't know what it wants, and I don't even know how to stop it.
That's it.
Ignorance becomes the defining feature of the horror.
That is the perfect endpoint for psychological horror. I mean, this deep dive clearly illustrates how to generate true fear. You establish a familiar, flawed relationship, invest the audience in it, and then brutally and immediately sever it. This leaves the protagonist isolated, facing a threat that operates entirely outside of the understood rules of their world, and without the key they thought they needed to survive.
It's a masterclass in exploiting trust and knowledge.
So what does this analysis mean for you, the learner, in your own examination of effective storytelling? The deepest fear this narrative tapped into wasn't just the monster itself, but that terrifying realization that the one person who promised you a way out, the person who held the fail-safe, the self-proclaimed expert, was the very first casualty. It renders all future expertise irrelevant.
So when you're analyzing a horror story, ask yourself, what familiar fail-safes, whether they are experts or rules or even institutional structures, does this narrative make unreliable? That vulnerability is often the true source of the ongoing dread.
Indeed. Thank you for sharing this compelling source material for our deep dive into narrative mechanics. We hope this gives you new insight into the architecture of fear. We'll catch you next time.